The Zephyrian High Council chamber buzzed with excitement as Admiral Kextar raised his four arms to silence the gathered delegates. His crystalline exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial suns that illuminated their homeworld's capital city. Around the massive circular table, representatives from 12 different species leaned forward, their various appendages clicking, rustling, and humming with anticipation. "Fellow members of the Galactic Dominion," Kextar's voice resonated through the bioacoustic chambers embedded in the walls. "Today marks the beginning of our greatest conquest. The primitive world known as Earth shall fall within one solar rotation." The Vrex delegate, a slug-like creature with multiple eye stalks, oozed forward slightly. "Are we certain this is necessary, Admiral? Our scouts report the humans have barely achieved interplanetary travel. They still use chemical propulsion and primitive nuclear energy." Kextar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. "Precisely why they must be eliminated now, before they develop further. Our xenobiologists have studied their broadcasts, their entertainment media, their military exercises. They are a violent, chaotic species that will only bring disorder to our carefully maintained galactic peace." A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing a blue-green world spinning lazily in space. Earth looked innocent enough, covered in swirling white clouds and vast oceans that reflected the light of its single star. "Observe their behavior patterns," Kextar continued as the display shifted to show various scenes from human history. Images of wars, destruction, and conflict flashed across the projection. They wage war against their own kind for resources they could easily share. They destroy their environment while simultaneously trying to preserve it. They create weapons capable of annihilating their entire planet, yet somehow restrain themselves from using them. The Caltharian representative, a being that resembled a living tree with crystalline bark, rustled its branches thoughtfully. "Perhaps that restraint indicates wisdom, Admiral. Many species go through violent phases before achieving enlightenment." "Nonsense!" Kextar snapped. "They are unpredictable, chaos incarnate. In their entertainment, they glorify violence and celebrate the individual over the collective. They cannot be reasoned with, cannot be controlled, cannot be integrated into our perfect society. They must be eliminated before they become a threat." The display changed again, showing human military capabilities. Primitive aircraft, ground vehicles, and naval vessels appeared on screen. The assembled delegates examined the images with a mixture of amusement and disdain. "Their most advanced weapons barely register on our threat assessment scales," noted the Quellan representative, her serpentine body coiling around her chair. "Our planetary shields alone could withstand everything they possess combined." Kextar gestured toward a massive display showing the Dominion fleet. Thousands of ships hung in formation around the Zephyrian homeworld, each one larger than anything humanity had ever constructed. The smallest scouts were the size of human cities, while the dreadnoughts stretched for kilometers and bristled with weapons that could crack continents. "The Third Dominion Fleet will handle this operation," Kextar announced. "Admiral Vexhar will lead the assault with 3,000 vessels. We estimate total planetary subjugation within 6 standard time units." The Manekian delegate, a feline-like biped with silver fur, flicked his ears skeptically. "Will we offer them the standard terms of surrender? Even primitive species deserve the opportunity to submit peacefully." "Of course," Kextar replied, though his tone suggested he hoped they would refuse. "We will broadcast the universal surrender demand on all their communication frequencies. They will have one time unit to respond with complete capitulation. When they inevitably refuse, we will demonstrate why the Galactic Dominion has remained unchallenged for 3,000 years." The chamber fell silent as each delegate contemplated the upcoming invasion. For most of them, it would be just another addition to their vast empire, another primitive world brought under their enlightened rule. None of them questioned whether humanity might surprise them. Far across the galaxy, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, unaware that its doom had been decided by beings who had never walked on its soil or breathed its air. Humanity went about its daily business, arguing about politics, working toward technological advancement, and dreaming of the stars they longed to reach. In research facilities around the world, scientists pushed the boundaries of physics, biology, and engineering. Children attended schools where they learned about cooperation and competition in equal measure. Artists created works that captured the full spectrum of human emotion and experience. Military strategists planned for conflicts they hoped would never come, while simultaneously working toward lasting peace. None of them knew that in the vast darkness between stars, the Third Dominion fleet was already beginning its journey toward Earth. Admiral Vexhar, a towering insectoid creature with 6 legs and razor-sharp mandibles, reviewed the target data from his flagship's command center. Humans? He mused to his subordinates, studying the biological data their scouts had gathered. Bipedal mammals with limited sensory capability and fragile bodies. They live barely 100 standard cycles and spend most of that time in conflict with each other. This will hardly qualify as a training exercise. His tactical officer, a silicon-based life form that communicated through crystalline resonance, chimed its agreement. Their largest military force possesses fewer than 2 million active personnel. Our landing forces alone number 50 million combat units. Vexhar nodded, his compound eyes reflecting the star charts displayed before him. Signal the fleet. Standard approach formation. We jump to the edge of their system in 40 time units, then proceed to demonstration distance. I want them to see exactly what they're facing when we deliver the surrender demand. As the fleet prepared for hyperspace translation, none of the Dominion officers bothered to study the more subtle aspects of human nature that their scouts had overlooked. They saw the wars but missed the underlying reasons for them. They observed the destruction but ignored the creativity. They noted the chaos but failed to understand the innovation that arose from it. Most critically, they analyzed human military capability based purely on technology and numbers, never considering that warfare might involve elements they had never encountered before. In their 3 millennia of galactic dominance, every species they had conquered followed predictable patterns. They had developed standard protocols for dealing with resistance, standard time frames for subjugation, and standard methods for integration. Humans, however, were not standard. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the control room of the Arecibo 2 radio telescope facility, reviewing the latest data from deep space monitoring systems. As the director of the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence program, she spent her days listening to the cosmic background radiation, hoping to detect signs of intelligent life among the stars. She had no way of knowing that intelligent life was about to find her first. "Dr. Chen," her assistant called out, pointing to one of the monitoring stations. "We're getting some unusual readings from Sector 7, high-energy signatures moving in formation at tremendous velocity." Sarah walked over to examine the data, her brow furrowing as she studied the display. "That's strange. The movement patterns are too organized to be natural phenomena, but the energy signatures are off the charts. Are we sure this isn't equipment malfunction? We've run diagnostics twice. The signals are definitely real and definitely artificial." The assistant paused, checking additional readouts. "Dr. Chen, based on these trajectories and velocities, whatever's out there is headed directly for our solar system." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as the implications hit her. After decades of searching for signs of extraterrestrial life, it appeared that such life had found them instead. And given the massive energy signatures and organized movement patterns, this wasn't a peaceful scientific expedition. "Get me a direct line to the Pentagon," she said quietly, "and prepare a full data package for immediate transmission. I think we're about to make first contact, and I don't think it's going to be friendly." As she reached for the emergency communication protocols, Sarah couldn't help but wonder whether humanity was ready for what was coming. They had always assumed that if aliens ever made contact, it would be through radio signals or peaceful exploration. The possibility of hostile first contact had been discussed in academic circles and portrayed in countless movies, but the reality of it actually happening felt surreal. In the depths of space, the Dominion fleet continued its approach, confident in their overwhelming superiority and certain of their inevitable victory. They had studied human technology, analyzed human military doctrine, and calculated human defensive capabilities down to the smallest detail. What they hadn't calculated was human ingenuity when faced with impossible odds, human determination when fighting for survival, or human unpredictability when everything they loved was threatened. The war they were about to start would not unfold according to their carefully laid plans. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what 3 billion years of evolution in a hostile environment could produce when pushed to the brink of extinction. The Dominion had announced war on Earth, but no one had warned them what humanity truly was. The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council convened within 12 hours of Dr. Chen's discovery. World leaders, military commanders, and scientific advisors filled the assembly hall in New York while secure video links connected them with counterparts across the globe. The atmosphere was tense but surprisingly unified as humanity faced its first existential threat from beyond Earth. General Patricia Morrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, stood at the main podium displaying the latest intelligence data. Ladies and gentlemen, we have confirmed the approach of what can only be described as a massive alien fleet. Current estimates suggest over 3,000 vessels of unknown configuration, traveling at speeds that our physicists say should be impossible. President Martinez leaned forward in his chair. How long do we have? Based on their current trajectory and deceleration pattern, they'll reach Earth orbit in approximately 18 hours, Dr. Chen reported from her position among the scientific advisory team. The energy signatures suggest technology far beyond our current capabilities. The Russian representative, Premier Volkov, drummed his fingers on the table. What are our defensive options? Can our combined nuclear arsenals pose any threat to forces of this magnitude? Admiral James Richardson of the U.S. Navy shook his head grimly. Sir, our most optimistic projections suggest that even if we launched every nuclear weapon on Earth simultaneously, we might damage perhaps a dozen of their smaller vessels, and that's assuming their shielding technology isn't as advanced as their propulsion systems. Silence fell over the assembly as the magnitude of their situation became clear. Humanity's most powerful weapons were essentially useless against the approaching threat. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Japan's leading expert on theoretical physics, raised her hand hesitantly. There might be alternatives to conventional military response. Our analysis of their approach pattern suggests they're following predictable military doctrine. They want to make contact before hostilities begin. To what end? Asked Chancellor Weber from Germany. Standard conquest protocol, replied Dr. Chen. Based on our observations of their formation and behavior, they likely plan to offer terms of surrender before attacking. It's a pattern we've seen in human history countless times when technologically advanced civilizations encounter less developed ones. Prime Minister Thompson from the United Kingdom leaned back in his chair thoughtfully. Then we have a window of opportunity. The question is, how we use it. In the depths of the Pentagon, Colonel Marcus Webb hunched over a secure terminal in the Department of Advanced Research Projects. Around him, teams of scientists, engineers, and military strategists worked frantically to develop responses to the alien threat. The facility hummed with activity as humanity's brightest minds grappled with challenges they had never imagined facing. Sir, called out Dr. Amanda Foster, a quantum physicist on loan from MIT, I think I've found something interesting in the alien fleet's energy signatures. Webb walked over to examine her display, which showed complex waveform patterns and mathematical calculations that made his head spin. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" "Their propulsion systems emit very specific quantum resonance frequencies," she explained, highlighting portions of the data. "The patterns are incredibly sophisticated but surprisingly uniform across their entire fleet. That suggests they're using standardized technology." "And that helps us how?" Dr. Foster smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "Standardized technology means standardized vulnerabilities. If we can find the right frequency modulation, we might be able to disrupt their systems. Not destroy them necessarily, but maybe create enough chaos to level the playing field." Meanwhile, in a secret facility beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Heinrich Müller examined reports from observatories around the world. As the director of the Global Defense Initiative's Xenobiology Division, he had spent years preparing for exactly this scenario, though he had always hoped it would remain theoretical. "The alien ships are massive," he noted to his research team. "Some of them are larger than our biggest cities. That size suggests several possibilities about their civilization." His assistant, Dr. Priya Patel, looked up from her analysis station. "Such as?" "They're either incredibly numerous, requiring vast ships to transport their populations, or they're overcompensating for some weakness through sheer size and numbers. In human military history, overwhelmingly large forces often indicate strategic inflexibility." Dr. Muller pulled up comparative analyses of Earth's military doctrine versus alien fleet formations. "Look at this. Their approach pattern is textbook perfect for overwhelming a technologically inferior opponent. Every ship has a specific role. Every formation serves a precise function. It's beautiful from an academic standpoint, but it's also predictable. You think we can exploit that predictability? I think we have to try. Humans have one advantage they probably don't expect. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned to adapt, to improvise, to find unconventional solutions to impossible problems. They've been the dominant power for 3 millennia. They may have forgotten how to deal with real resistance." Across the Pacific, in an underground bunker in Australia, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Harrison coordinated with resistance cells that were forming spontaneously across the globe. The internet had exploded with activity as news of the alien threat spread, and humanity's response was both chaotic and inspiring. "Ma'am, we're getting reports from every continent," her communications officer reported. "Civilian populations are organizing themselves into defensive units. Engineers are volunteering to weaponize industrial equipment. Scientists are sharing research openly across all borders." Harrison nodded grimly. "That's good. If this invasion follows historical patterns, they'll try to capture major population centers and government installations first. But if resistance is distributed across the entire planet, they'll have a much harder time maintaining control." Her tactical display showed the current status of human defensive preparations. It wasn't much compared to alien technology, but it was growing rapidly. Factories were being converted to produce makeshift weapons and defensive equipment. Transportation networks were being modified to support rapid movement of personnel and supplies. Communication systems were being hardened against potential alien interference. Most importantly, humans were doing what they had always done best in times of crisis. They were adapting. In orbit around Earth, the first alien scout ships began to arrive. Admiral Vexhar watched from his flagship as the blue-green world grew larger on his displays. The planet looked even more primitive up close, with scattered lights indicating population centers and primitive orbital installations that posed no threat to his fleet. "Signal the main fleet," he commanded. "Begin standard formation deployment. I want demonstration platforms positioned for maximum visual impact." His tactical officer chimed acknowledgement. "Shall we begin broadcasting the surrender demand, Admiral?" "Not yet. Let them see us first. Fear is an excellent motivator for compliance." Across the Dominion fleet, thousands of ships began moving into attack formation above Earth's major continents. Each vessel was a technological marvel, equipped with weapons that could level cities and defenses that could withstand anything humanity possessed. The aliens had conducted this operation hundreds of times before, and it always ended the same way: complete surrender followed by peaceful integration into the Dominion. But as the alien ships took their positions, sensors throughout the fleet began detecting unusual activity on the planet's surface. Energy signatures were spiking across multiple continents. Communication networks were experiencing massive increases in traffic. Most puzzling, industrial facilities worldwide were retooling at unprecedented speeds. "Admiral," the sensor operator reported with confusion, "the humans appear to be preparing for war rather than surrender." Vexhar clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Predictable. Primitive species often choose futile resistance before accepting reality. It makes no difference. Begin the surrender broadcast." The message that reached every radio, television, and communication device on Earth was simple and direct. "People of Earth, you are now under the authority of the Galactic Dominion. Cease all military activities and prepare for peaceful integration. You have one standard time unit to comply. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force." The response from Earth came not through official government channels, but through an open broadcast on all frequencies. The voice belonged to President Martinez, but he spoke for all of humanity. "To the forces threatening our world, we have received your demand for surrender. We respectfully decline. Earth is our home, and we will defend it with everything we have. If you want this planet, you'll have to fight for every inch of it." The transmission ended with something the aliens had never encountered before: a coordinated activation of early warning systems across the entire planet. Radar installations, satellite networks, and communication relays all came online simultaneously, creating a dense web of detection and communication capability that no previous enemy had possessed. Admiral Vexhar stared at his displays in confusion. In 3,000 years of Dominion expansion, no species had ever rejected the initial surrender demand with such unity and determination. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported nervously, "we're detecting coordinated defensive preparations across all major population centers. The humans appear to be implementing some form of distributed resistance strategy." "Impossible," Vexhar replied. "Our xenobiologists confirmed they lack unified command structure. They can't coordinate a planetary defense." But the evidence on his screens suggested otherwise. Across Earth's surface, millions of humans were proving that when faced with extinction, they could indeed work together with terrifying efficiency. The war was about to begin, and for the first time in their long history of conquest, the Galactic Dominion was about to discover what happened when they picked a fight with a species that had evolved by competing against itself for survival on a planet that seemed designed to kill anything that wasn't tough enough to fight back. The aliens had expected quick victory against a divided, primitive world. Instead, they found themselves facing a unified planet full of creative, adaptable survivors who had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to overcome impossible odds. Humanity was about to teach the galaxy a lesson in warfare that it would never forget. The first alien assault began precisely 1 hour after humanity's rejection of the surrender demand. Admiral Vexhar initiated what he expected to be a brief demonstration of overwhelming force, targeting military installations and major cities with surgical precision. The Dominion's standard protocol called for destroying approximately 10% of defensive capability while leaving infrastructure intact for later occupation. The aliens had not accounted for humanity's response. As the first energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking targets across North America and Europe, they triggered something unprecedented in galactic warfare history. Instead of cowering in terror or scrambling to surrender, human populations responded with coordinated fury that defied every model in Dominion military doctrine. Dr. Foster's quantum resonance disruption system, hastily assembled from components salvaged from particle accelerators worldwide, activated the moment alien weapons began firing. The effect was immediate and devastating to the alien fleet's coordination. Ships that had maintained perfect formation for the entire journey to Earth suddenly found their navigation systems fluctuating wildly. "What's happening?" Admiral Vexhar demanded as his flagship lurched unexpectedly. "Unknown interference with our quantum navigation matrix," his technical officer reported, mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "The source appears to be ground-based, but the frequency modulation is unlike anything in our databases. On Earth's surface, humanity's distributed defense network activated with clockwork precision. The plan that had seemed impossible just days earlier unfolded across every continent simultaneously. While alien ships struggled with navigation problems, ground-based installations began launching waves of unconventional weapons. These weren't the nuclear missiles the aliens had prepared for. Instead, humanity launched everything from modified industrial rockets packed with metallic chaff to experimental electromagnetic pulse devices that had been theoretical until 48 hours earlier. The weapons weren't designed to destroy alien ships outright, but to create confusion, disrupt sensors, and buy time for the next phase of humanity's defense. Colonel Webb watched from the Pentagon War Room as reports flooded in from around the globe. "Phase 1 is working," he announced to the assembled commanders. "Alien formation integrity is degrading. Phase 2 is authorized." Across Earth, teams of engineers activated systems they had built using principles that the aliens had never encountered. Humans had learned warfare in an environment where survival meant constant adaptation and innovation. Every conflict in human history had driven technological advancement and tactical evolution. Now, faced with an enemy that relied on overwhelming technological superiority, humanity deployed its greatest weapon: creativity born from desperation. In Switzerland, Dr. Muller's xenobiology team had identified a critical vulnerability in alien ship design. The massive vessels that had intimidated human observers actually represented a fundamental weakness. They were too large to maneuver effectively in Earth's gravity well, and their size made them ideal targets for unconventional attacks. "Initiate Operation Prometheus," Dr. Muller commanded. Around the world, space elevators, massive construction cranes, and industrial launchers began firing projectiles that would have seemed absurd to any conventional military analyst. Shipping containers filled with industrial adhesive, construction materials mixed with experimental metamaterials, and even garbage compressed into dense radar-absorbent masses streaked toward the alien fleet. The aliens had shields designed to deflect energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. They had not prepared for attacks using modified industrial epoxy that hardened on contact, creating irregular masses that disrupted their hull integrity and sensor arrays. They had not anticipated humans weaponizing everything from sewage treatment plants to food processing facilities. Admiral Vexhar watched in growing alarm as his fleet's efficiency degraded by the minute. Ships collided with debris clouds that seemed to appear from nowhere. Navigation systems failed as human-generated interference created false readings. Most disturbing, several of his smaller vessels had lost maneuvering capability after being struck by what appeared to be construction materials that somehow adhered to their hulls and couldn't be removed. "This is impossible," he muttered, reviewing tactical displays that made no sense according to established military doctrine. "They're using industrial equipment as weapons. They're turning their own infrastructure into ammunition." His intelligence officer chimed nervously. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildups across multiple continents. The humans appear to be preparing some form of coordinated strike. What the aliens didn't understand was that humanity had just completed the largest engineering project in their history in less than 48 hours. Every power grid on Earth had been connected and synchronized. Every particle accelerator, fusion reactor, and experimental energy system had been networked together. The combined technological might of human civilization was about to be focused on a single purpose. Dr. Chen stood in the control room of the Global Energy Network, her hands poised over controls that represented humanity's last desperate gamble. Around her, scientists and engineers from every nation on Earth worked together with perfect coordination, their differences forgotten in the face of extinction. "All stations report ready," her assistant announced. "Global energy reserves at maximum capacity," called out another technician. "Quantum resonance generators synchronized," added Dr. Foster's voice over the communication system. Dr. Chen took a deep breath. "Initiate global defense protocol." Every power plant, solar array, nuclear reactor, and experimental energy system on Earth discharged simultaneously. The combined electrical output of human civilization, channeled through hastily constructed transmission networks and focused by quantum resonance amplifiers, created something that had never been attempted before: a planet-wide electromagnetic pulse of unprecedented magnitude. The pulse wasn't aimed at destroying the alien fleet outright. Instead, it was designed to overload every electronic system within Earth's magnetic field, creating a level of technological chaos that would neutralize the aliens' advantages while leaving humanity's primarily analog backup systems functional. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Dominion fleet. Ships that had relied on advanced computer systems for everything from life support to navigation suddenly found themselves operating on emergency backup systems that couldn't handle the complexity of coordinated fleet operations. The perfect military formation dissolved into chaos as individual ships struggled to maintain basic functionality. But humanity wasn't finished. As alien ships floundered in the electromagnetic aftermath, every guerrilla warfare expert, special forces operative, and resistance fighter on Earth implemented tactics that no galactic empire had ever faced. Humans had spent centuries learning how to fight superior forces using asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, and unconventional tactics. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison coordinated global resistance efforts from her command bunker as reports poured in of successful operations against grounded alien vessels. Humans had infiltrated disabled ships using techniques learned from urban warfare, industrial espionage, and extreme environment exploration. They didn't try to fight alien soldiers directly. Instead, they sabotaged life support systems, corrupted computer networks, and created the kind of persistent, invisible threat that drove occupying forces to paranoia and mistakes. Admiral Vexhar found himself in command of a fleet that was rapidly becoming non-functional. His ships were scattered across Earth's orbital space, many of them barely operational. Ground forces that had landed to secure strategic targets found themselves facing resistance that seemed to emerge from the planet itself. "Sir," his communications officer reported with barely controlled panic, "we're receiving surrender offers from the humans." "Finally," Vexhar replied, relief evident in his voice. "Transmit acceptance." "Sir, I don't think you understand. They're offering us terms for our surrender." The message that followed was transmitted on every frequency the aliens were monitoring. President Martinez's voice carried a tone of respectful but firm authority as he addressed the Dominion fleet. "To Admiral Vexhar and the forces of the Galactic Dominion, your invasion has failed. Your fleet is disabled, your forces are scattered, and your technological advantages have been neutralized. We offer you the opportunity to surrender with dignity. You will be treated as prisoners of war according to our humanitarian conventions. Your ships will be quarantined but not destroyed. Your personnel will be housed safely until arrangements can be made for your repatriation." The message concluded with something that sent chills through every alien who heard it. This offer expires in one standard time unit. If you continue hostilities, we will demonstrate additional capabilities that we prefer not to use. Earth's children are creative, Admiral, and we have many more ideas we haven't tried yet. In the Zephyrian High Council chambers, where the invasion had been planned with such confidence just days earlier, emergency sessions were being held to understand how their most powerful fleet had been defeated by a primitive world that shouldn't have posed any threat. Admiral Kextar reviewed the reports with growing disbelief. They turned their entire planetary infrastructure into a weapon system. They used industrial equipment to create military advantages. They coordinated a global defense using technology we didn't even recognize as threatening. The Caltharian representative rustled its crystalline branches thoughtfully. Perhaps we misunderstood what made them dangerous. We saw their conflicts and assumed they were chaotic. We observed their competition and thought it made them weak. Instead, it appears to have made them incredibly adaptive. They fight like nothing we've ever encountered, the Mynekian delegate added. Not as individuals seeking glory, not as a unified collective following orders, but as millions of independent entities all working toward the same goal through completely different methods. As the Council grappled with the implications of their defeat, Admiral Vexhar made the most difficult decision of his military career. Faced with a choice between watching his fleet be systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed capable of turning anything into a weapon, or accepting surrender terms from a species he had assumed would be easily conquered, he chose survival. The formal surrender ceremony took place in neutral space, with alien delegates boarding a human space station that had been hastily constructed from repurposed orbital infrastructure. The humans who met them were professional, respectful, and utterly confident in a way that spoke of species' deep experience with both victory and defeat. President Martinez addressed the assembled alien representatives with diplomatic courtesy but unmistakable strength. We hope this marks the beginning of peaceful relations between Earth and the Galactic Dominion. We have much to learn from each other. Admiral Vexhar, his pride wounded, but his respect for humanity growing, responded formally. The Dominion has underestimated Earth. This will not happen again. No, President Martinez replied with a slight smile. It won't, because now you understand what we are. We're the species that learned survival by competing with ourselves. We're the children of a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We're the ones who turned that struggle into strength. As news of Earth's victory spread across the galaxy, the Galactic Dominion found itself facing something unprecedented. Respect mixed with fear from species they had long dominated, and interest from others who had never before seen successful resistance to Dominion power. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as conquerors or supplicants, but as survivors who had earned their place among the stars through determination, creativity, and the kind of adaptive resilience that only came from evolving in a universe that offered no guarantees. The aliens had announced war on Earth, but no one had warned them that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or technology. It was the simple, terrifying fact that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to win against impossible odds. And now the galaxy knew what that meant.